in tonight's headlines. Beijing slams Washington for proposing visa restrictions on mainland and SAR officials responsible for implementing the national security law. Environment Secretary Tse Chin-wan says the government will make sure the public is better prepared before reintroducing the territory-wide waste charging scheme. And U.S. President Joe Biden urges Hamas to take a ceasefire deal offered by Israel, saying it is time to end the war.
Hong Kong and Beijing slammed the United States for proposing new visa restrictions on mainland and Hong Kong officials enforcing the national security law. The U.S. State Department said it was taking steps to impose new visa restrictions on mainland and Hong Kong officials responsible for implementing the national security law in response to the outcome in the city's landmark national security case, in which 14 were convicted for subversion the day before, and called for immediate release of the unjustly detained individuals. The U.S. did not name the officials subject to the sanctions. The SAR government hit back on late Friday night, criticizing U.S. action as despicable political manipulation and that it will not be intimidated. It stressed in a statement that the court judgment clearly set out the reasons for the verdicts, and such criminal acts had nothing to do with the so-called fight for democracy and human rights. In a strongly worded statement issued around the same time, the Foreign Ministry office in the SAR described Washington's act as a political show in vain, and the spirit of the rule of law shall not be violated. It condemned the baseless accusations against the verdicts in the national security trial, maintaining that the High Court had handled the case impartially and without interference. Meanwhile, Hong Kong Finance Chief Paul Chan said U.S. business leaders have no concern about national security. His remarks came after he was asked if the U.S. business figures and politicians he met during his 4-day trip in California had expressed concern when the national security case dominated headlines in Hong Kong. Chan said the concern and interests of business sector were all about the stability of Hong Kong and its business environment. Bess Leung, Cable News.
Secretary for Environment and Ecology Tse Chin-wan says the government will make sure the public is ready before reintroducing the territory-wide waste charging scheme, which was shelved for the third time on Monday. Speaking on air this morning, Tse says it would be irresponsible to set a time frame to impose the scheme.
第一個條件就係真係個民情，佢係可以去接受一樣嘢。第二個基本條件就係話咧嚇，即係我哋成個計劃行嘅時候係可以順利容易做嘅。
Before solving raised issues such as insufficient recycling facilities and lack of support from the general public. He also emphasizes the importance of finding tactics to facilitate both residents and cleaners in participating in the scheme. Though the plan is shelved for now, Tse says the trial run itself was enough to raise public awareness in waste reduction. The department is set to increase efforts in promoting and teaching the public about recycling and the benefits of waste reduction. From today onwards, 840,000 public housing tenants will receive free designated rubbish bags from the government for half a year as a test run, to help them gain awareness of how much rubbish they produce per day, and if there is any way they can minimize waste production.
一個實物嘅參與，因為好多時候如果我哋淨係咧嚇，即係嚇宣傳啊、教育啊講，哇真係講咗20年啊嘛，係嘛
？Tse says it's crucial to provide the public with realistic materials in order to push the ideas forward. We have been educating the public only verbally for 20 years, and it's time we step up, he said. The government is set to upgrade all recycling facilities across the city in a year. The amounts of food waste machines will be doubled, and buses will serve as remote food waste spots and be sent to certain single private residential buildings to facilitate the process. An additional incinerator will also be built near Shek Ku Chau and Tang Choi in Tuen Mun. Upon its completion, the city will be able to deal with a daily average of 11,000 tons of garbage. Janice Yu, Cable News. "67 people were arrested for assisting a fraud syndicate in money laundering. 19 non-Chinese and some domestic helpers were among the 35 men and 32 women arrested, and they were deceived into selling or lending their online virtual bank accounts to the syndicates, which would then use their accounts to collect illicit money and launder crime proceeds. Such accounts are linked to 52 cases of deception of online job recruitments, e-shopping and investments, involving more than 100 victims and financial losses up to $73 million. The force says this is not the first case that involved domestic helpers from abroad, and there's an increase of helpers arrested in deception and money laundering cases.
A stretch of Haitan Street in Shamshui-Po has been closed for a week after subsiding on Friday. A 10 by 6 meter patch of the road collapsed into the ground to a depth of about 3 meters. Police said they received a report at about 4 p.m. on Friday about the subsidence and cordoned off the area. Officers said the authorities would have to carry out work on an underground water main at the site. The Transport Department said all lanes of Haitan Street between Yanqiao Street and Guilin Street would be closed to all traffic until 6 a.m. next Friday, and affected bus routes have been diverted.
A fire was detected at Kai Chun Court in Diamond Hill at 11 a.m. Smoke billowed from a low-level area at Kai Wu House, alarming residents. It was later confirmed that the fake smoke came from a refuse collection point, and more than 80 residents have evacuated to safety on their own. Firefighters arrived at the scene and tackled the blaze. The fire was allegedly caused by a lit cigarette butt that was carelessly dumped into the refuse collection point.
What's your response to that?
U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Palestinian group Hamas to take a ceasefire deal offered by Israel to stop the ongoing conflict in the Gaza Strip.
This is truly a decisive moment. Israel has made their proposal. Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove whether they really mean it. Hamas needs to take the deal. Now it's time to raise your voices and demand that Hamas come to the table, agrees to this deal, and end this war that they began. It's time for this war to end, for the day after to begin. Thank you very much.
Unfolding over 3 phases, the latest peace deal, if agreed upon, could begin with a 6-week-long ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from certain parts of the Gaza Strip. Israeli hostages will be released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. There would also be a desperately needed surge in humanitarian assistance, with 600 trucks carrying essential supplies into Gaza each day. It's been nearly 8 months since Israel invaded the Gaza Strip after Hamas launched a surprise attack on southern Israel last year, killing nearly 1,200 people. More than 36,000 Palestinians have perished in Israeli air raids and ground assaults. Millions have been displaced, and most parts of the Gaza Strip have been reduced to rubble. Sachin Katwi, Cable News. The United States will continue to play a major role in the Indo-Pacific as Washington seeks to strengthen its alliances and partnerships in the region. Speaking at a defense forum in Singapore, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said America can be secure only if Asia is.
War or a fight with China is neither imminent, in my view, or unavoidable. So, leaders of great power nations need to continue to work together to ensure that we're doing things to reduce the opportunities for miscalculation and misunderstandings.
Defense Minister Dong Jun met with Austin on the sidelines of the forum as both countries seek to repair lines of communication between their militaries, which would be critical to maintain stability in the region. Speaking at the same forum, the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., took aim at Beijing over territorial disputes in the South China Sea.
Attempts to apply domestic laws and regulations beyond one's territory and jurisdiction violate international law, exacerbate tensions, and undermine regional peace and security.
However, Wu Qian, spokesman for the Ministry of National Defense, said talks between Dong and Austin have given both sides a deeper understanding of each other's positions on highly sensitive issues such as Taiwan and Beijing's sovereignty in the South China Sea.